All right, so next, let's take a look at the rest of week 4. So for week 4's assessment, you have a final exam. It is worth 35 points. There's only 14 questions. They are on matching the 10 basic tools to the description of their use, matching the 5 InDesign panels to their functions, creating a new document in InDesign, and inserting text frames and images, identifying and applying the 4 basic principles of design: contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity, and defining and applying the 5 basic elements of design: shape, line, color, texture, and value. So let's look at some of those tools that we went over in week 1, those 10 basic tools and the descriptions of their use. I'm going to open up for you guys some of my old PowerPoints so we can go over this. This will help you out. Actually, I'm going to open up all my old PowerPoints. I'm going to open up weeks 1 through 3. So 1, 2. I just went to do the laugh, like the count. My daughter is 2. She's learning, numbers and letters and all these things. And she thinks that if you count things like the count, it's basically the most hysterical thing that she's ever seen or heard in her entire life. All right. Let's see. Tools. Here we go. So again, if yours screen looks a little bit different than mine, I do work and I usually teach in Essentials Classic just because I've been in InDesign since its inception, and that's the way it looks, when I first started working in it. And I'm a creature of habit, and I shake my fist at the ceiling of change. Not really. I'm pretty much a roll with it kind of person, but whenever they move all the things around, I'm like, I feel like I don't know where anything is right now. I feel confused. So I like to work in Essentials Classic. All right. So let's look at these tools. You saw me use a bunch of them today. The black mouse or the item select tool, you use that to select and move everything around, right, on the page. So you can select the frames. Let me get out of full screen and just kind of do a quick demo, because I feel like even if you've been in InDesign a lot, some of these can be a little bit confusing, right? Especially if this is new to you, and even though it's week 4 and you might be saying, oh man, is this ever going to make sense? It is going to make sense. It's really, really going to make sense. Don't worry. The more you use these programs, the more it makes sense. So a lot of times I like to use analogies for things, right? It just makes it a little bit easier to explain things a certain way. So let's think of InDesign, the program itself, in our new document that we made. Let's think of it as our table, like our dining room table, and we're about to set the table for dinner. Okay, so there's things that we need to put on the table first, right? And maybe the white right here, this is the top of the table, and then this is kind of the negative space around the table, okay? We're setting the table. I had a big birthday party here this weekend. My daughter turned 2. I had like 20 people in my house. So let's talk about decorating the table. So first things first, I need the tablecloth on the table. And maybe my tablecloth has a picture associated with it. So if my tablecloth is a picture, I'm going to use the rectangle frame tool. And I don't want if my document has a bleed, I don't want my tablecloth. I don't want to buy a tablecloth that just is the size of my table, right? Because people spill things. People bump the tablecloth over. I want one that's going to go a little bit past the edge, right? So it drapes nicely. That's kind of what your bleed is, okay? Your bleed is the tablecloth that goes past the edge. So let's say that my tablecloth is an image. I'm gonna place my image now onto my table by doing a file place in my rectangle frame tool. I'm gonna go to, let me just find a quick image here. Hold on, where did I put that? I forget where I put it last week. It shouldn't have been in there. Let's try week 2. I just want something that's not like super busy, so you're like, I can't even see what you're doing right now. Menu background, here we go. All right, so here is, here's my tablecloth, okay? So I have that nice tablecloth that goes all the way over and it drapes over the edges, meaning it goes past the border of the page and extends to my bleed lines. But maybe I want to get like super fancy, so I'm gonna do one of those, like a tablecloth with a tablecloth on top. So I have my nice patterned tablecloth, and then maybe on top of that, I'm going to do just a solid colored tablecloth. You know, because I'm having my mother and my mother-in-law over, and they like to critique how I've arranged my table, right? You guys have had your parents over. All right, so maybe this tablecloth is just gonna go inside of my margin that I have, which is this pink line right here. Pink line margin, black line right here was our page, red line on the outside, that's our bleed. So I'm gonna go from the edge of the pink line to the edge of the pink line, but it's gonna be solid. So this time I didn't use the rectangle frame tool, I used the rectangle tool. And I'm gonna fill that with just a color. So I'm gonna go in my swatches palette, which I put over here. And again, if you don't have any of the palettes open that I do, you can find them all under window. That's where all your palettes are located. So I'm going to put pink over it because it was my daughter's birthday. Maybe not that bright of a pink. Maybe I bought myself a pink that's more of like a 50% pink. So I would change it in the tint area in the swatches. Now, maybe I bought a tablecloth that's one of those ones that's kind of see-through so you can see the patterned tablecloth underneath it. That would make sense, especially for my fancy table. That's when I would go up here and I would change the opacity rather than the tint. If I want something to show through, I change the opacity. So maybe I'm going to change the opacity here to 60, let's say. Okay. Now, next thing I need to do is I need to set the table. So I need some place settings. I'm gonna put some plates down. All right. So I'm going to go to my ellipses tool first, and I'm going to draw a circle, and I want it to be a nice circle, like proportionate circle. So same width as height. I'm going to hold down Shift and click and drag. Now I have my nice proportional circle there, and this is going to be where my centerpiece goes in my table. So I'm just going to go to my swatches again. I'm just going to fill this with white or paper. I want to make sure, though, that it's nice and centered on my tablecloth. Because, again, you know, my mom's coming over, and she likes to point things out. So I'm going to grab everything. I'm going to hit Command-A, and I'm going to go over to my alignment. And I want to say aligned horizontal centers and align vertical centers. All right, now it's nice. Everything's nice and centered on the table here. So we're good to go there. All right, next what I want to do is I want to add that centerpiece that I have. So again, I'm going to draw another circle to add my picture into because that's my centerpiece. But I want to use the ellipses frame tool this time. And again, I'm going to put it right in the middle of this one. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm using the frame tool, not the regular one. And I'm going to draw this. And ooh, I didn't get it right. All right, I'm going to go up to my direct select tool. I'm going to click on it and then hold down Shift again and just kind of drag from the corner. Drag down from the bottom. That looks about right. And I'm going to center these two with each other. So I'm going to go to Align. And I'm going to click actually right down here. See how it says Align to Selection? That's what I defaulted as. I actually want to make sure that these two things stay aligned on the page. So I'm going to click right here and I'm going to say Align to the page. And I'm going to say horizontal and vertical. And then I don't like to leave that as my default, so I'm going to go back to Align to Selection before I close it out. All right, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that, the frame tool that I just drew with my black arrow, and I'm going to go File, Place. And I am going to add in this image right here. It's really big, so I'm going to go to Object, Fitting, and I want to fill the frame proportionally. All right, that's cool. But what if I really wanted to focus on kind of just the coffee in this cake? This is where the direct selection tool comes in. So let's think of this now as maybe it's not my centerpiece, or maybe my centerpiece is my big fruit salad that I made, because I made a ginormous fruit salad. I don't know what I'm going to do with like the 45 pounds of extra fruit I have this week, but I digress. So I'm going to select here with my white selection tool. So let's think of the white selection tool as kind of like those big, you know, fork and spoon that you have that you get in there and you mix everything up with, and you can select, like, you know, grab stuff with, or tongs that you can grab stuff with. That's kind of what that direct selection tool is. I'm going to hold down Shift and Command. And once I hold down Shift and Command, I can now select my image on the inside and make it larger proportionally. Because I always want to make sure that I'm scaling my images proportionally. And I can kind of move things around inside my frame. Now, if you're not sure once you start to do this, that things are proportional, you can double check here. So just kind of click off, click back on. These two numbers need to match. If you're not sure, again, if they actually do match, because there's so many numbers here, just select everything, do a Command C, paste it in there, Command V. And then I'm going to just use the direct selection tool again and just kind of move this around in here to make sure I got a good picture of the coffee, and the piece of cake. And I did not have enough lunch before I started doing all of these pictures. That is for sure. All right, so now we've taken a look at the direct selection tool, the direct selection tool. We've looked at the difference between the frame tool versus, you know, the regular rectangle tool, the regular ellipses tool, and the ellipses frame tool. We've looked at the Align palette, the swatches palette. You can toggle between different views over here. So now I want to see what it's going to look like when it's cut, when it comes back from the printer cut, which means that they will have cut it to the cut line. So I can change my view from normal down here to preview. And that's what it's going to look like cut. It takes off your bleed. So you can tell if something's too close to the edge that you don't want cut off. You can also hit W to get back over. Now, let's go back in. Yeah, I love the W shortcut too. I just have to remember when I'm teaching not to use too many shortcuts. That's why I download this program called Keycaster, so it shows you on the screen when I hit a key. I wish it showed the option key. That's the one thing that really bums me out, is that it doesn't show that I'm hitting the option key. All right, so then we have the type tool. Again, creating text boxes and adding the type in. So let's go over, grab our type tool, and maybe we want our type to run into these columns. And I want all of my text boxes to run in the 4 columns that I have here. So I'm gonna drag the first one, and then what I'm gonna do is, you'll notice how I have it offset a bit. Let me zoom in. Offset a bit from the edge. I always make sure to do this. You wanna be offset from the edge of your rectangle that you draw in the background. That's just good design. And the reason for that is it gives more padding to the elements on the page. It just flows nicer. So then I want to do the same thing over here. So I would make a copy of this one. So again, you can hit, edit, copy, edit, paste, or you can hold down the option key and click and drag and move it over and just align it to the edge of this one right here. And then I'm just gonna click and drag these over here and add this one in. But what if I want my text to run around this? I can do that with text wrap. That's a good thing about text wrap. So let's add some text in. Now, did you know that you can import text just by doing a file place with your cursor in the text box? You can do file, place, let me just find some text real quick. That's not like my notes or something. Yeah, grab walk and roll. Where are you? Restaurant assets. There we go. There we go. And it imports it right in. So again, you would use your selection tool, the black arrow, and you're going to want to manually click on this text box, click the plus sign, click into this text box, plus sign again, click into this one, plus sign again, click into that one. And then to do that text wrap, select that white ellipses that you have right there. Go to text wrap, which if it's not open on your machine or on your InDesign, go to Window, text wrap. They used to have text wrap over under Object. Oh, okay, so that's how you were doing it. But you have to make sure when you do place that you're in the text box with the cursor, and it will work that way. But if you just did, that makes sense now. If you just did file place, like the Command D for file place, and I hit open and click, it is just gonna kind of add it in. But it should be text when it adds it in. Something weird might have happened, but I would just, try to re-import it that way. All right, so selecting that circle, go to text wrap, and you're going to want to wrap around the bounding box. And sometimes oh, no, not that one. We want to wrap around the actual object itself for this one. Because if we wrapped around the bounding box, it's going to wrap it around the perceived edge right here. This is the bounding box. And instead, I want it to literally wrap around the circle. And I want it to be offset a little bit more than it is. So I'm going to press the up and just bump it off a little bit more. You know? So that's a great way that we can kind of set that up. Let's go look and see what other tools I had on this page. Oh, right, the line tool, exactly what it says. Use it to create a line. The pen tool. The pen tool works in InDesign exactly how the pen tool works in Illustrator. It actually, I feel like the mechanism in Illustrator is a little bit smoother, and this is just my perception. You guys might not notice this, but it could just be that it used to not work as well, and they probably fixed it, but in my head, I think it doesn't work as well. And then again, the rectangle frame tool and the rectangle tool, I feel like these two always end up on your quizzes. And then the arrows, those little ticking arrows, show that there are tools that are hidden below. The scissor tool splits a path. I never use this tool. These are the tools up here that I never use. The page tool, the gap tool, the content selector tool. Over here, the scissor tool, I just never use it. The frame transform tool, I don't use it because I always seem to use the drop down option. The gradient feather tool, I love. I love this tool. So let's go do a quick demo of that again. So let's say that I want this image to kind of feather up here. What I would do is I would use the gradient feather tool. Without fail, I always seem to go in the wrong direction first. So you're going to click on the object or the image or the color block that you want to feather, add the gradient feather to, and then click and drag. I always go in the wrong direction. Oh, I did it right this time. So click from inside to outside. And if you end it, like, you can kind of adjust it. It's all in the feel of it. Holding down shift will make it nice and straight, the feather nice and straight. Otherwise, it'll kind of go off at whatever angle that you are clicking at. I really love that tool. You used to have to do effects like that in Photoshop, save your image as something else, and then re-import it into InDesign. In the last couple of years, they've added that tool, and I was like, oh, what's this, the first time. The note tool, everyone always cracks up laughing when I say this. The note tool is stupid. There's just no other way around it. It creates notes, and not in a way that, like, is at all functional. Like, I don't even... Like, when I tell you that I don't even understand this tool or its purpose, I don't even understand this tool or its purpose. Like, you're like, oh, I could probably add a note here. No, the notes are in their own panel. They're over here. Like, hi, I'm a note. And that's it. Like, oh, okay, that's great. Like, if you could, and it kind of shows up as like a thing right here, but like, if you could just, leave something like a note to yourself over here, like that looked like a Post-it note, that would be so much better, but it's not set up that way. I hate to say that. So therefore it's dumb. I don't know. Everybody always laughs when I say that when they watch my videos. They're like, oh my gosh, you with the note tool. And then the color theme tool allows you to pick multiple colors from one image, but you don't get to select the colors, okay? So in a way, this tool's kind of dumb too. Like, it'd be cool if you could be like, click, 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 and it would let you select like 5 of them in a row, but instead you click on the image and it's like, these are the colors that we selected for you. And you're like, oh, okay, thanks, but I wanted these ones. It's like, nope, sorry. These are the ones that we selected for you. And then for some reason, once you open it up, I'm not even kidding you, I can like never figure out kind of how to get this tool to just go away. I'm always like, go away. All right, go up there. I don't know. I would rather use the eyedropper tool personally and just pick my own colors. So, but again, some people like it. If you like it and it works for you, that's awesome. Then there is the zoom tool. So the zoom tool is exactly what it says. And you can just zoom in, zoom out, zoom around. The hand tool is awesome. You can get to the hand tool if you just, all right, don't use it if you're in here with like your, don't use this quick key if you're in your text box, obviously, typing, but click off and then just click the space button. That automatically gives you the hand tool to just grab and move things around. So I always love that. And again, the fill and stroke. So the big full square, that's your fill. So let's draw an ellipses here so we can see. That's your fill. The border here, that is your stroke. And then you can edit the size of the stroke in two different ways. Over in the stroke panel, up here. And again, this is why I like Essentials Classic. It puts your options up here, all of the options, and I don't think that that shows up in regular Essentials. And then you can turn the grid on and off, again, by pressing the W key. Here are those panels. The CC library, where you can save color themes and images and then bring them over from between program to program. Your swatches. You can save your color swatches. The stroke, you can adjust the stroke type and the weight. The gradient, you can add it and adjust gradients. I won't say never. I very, 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 very rarely use gradients. I'm not a fan. Some people are, I'm just not. You know, to each their own. But you'll just probably not really ever see me use a gradient. Sometimes I use them to do like interesting, fun things as an effect, but that's about it. The type tool, again, you need to draw the text box first, click in it with the type tool, and then start typing. So that's where it's a little bit different than in your Photoshop or your Illustrator, where you can just like click on the screen. Here are all of the tools with the tools underneath laid out for you. And then what else did we say was going to be on this quiz? Creating a new document. Again, file new. Inserting text frames and images. I showed you guys how to do that. Oh yes, the 4 basic principles of design. Let's go over that real quick again. So that was a different week. It was not week 1. Was it week 2? Let me look at my agenda. Yes, it was on week 2 that we went over this. And again, I like to open up a design and actually go over the design and see if it has those crap principles. I think that that's sometimes the easiest way to do it. So I am going to go into week 3, open up the assessment that I created. Let me see. Hold on, wrong one, wrong folder. Week 3 assessment. Where are you? Oh, here it is. Like I have more than one in here. All right. Let's open up the PDF file. All right, so this was page 1. This was page 2. So our first crap principle is contrast. And contrast can be, color contrast. It can be contrast in your fonts. It can be other contrast on the page, kind of contrast in the placement of things on the page. There's a lot of different things that can show contrast. I'm actually trying to see. I hope it didn't get thrown away. I always like to keep this one, and I feel bad saying this one bad ad that I got in the mail, but I did get a bad ad. Say that 10 times fast, in the mail. And I like to hold on to it to kind of show, oh, here it is, the difference between the you know, something that's kind of well designed and something that it's not horrible. It just needs more of those crap principles applied. All right, so hold on one second. I'm just gonna turn on my camera. Please don't judge me for my hair today. This is the judgment-free zone, but yeah. All right, so I had gotten, and it was a while ago, this ad, and there is just like, let's see if I can. Let there be light in the basement office. Hold on. Ooh, a little bit better. All right. So there is just a whole lot going on with this ad, obviously. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 images on the front plus a logo. On the back, there's all these images, but they aren't using the crap principles, and they're also not using a very good margin. Look at how close this information is to the cut line over here. Like, this definitely needs a bigger margin. If this had shifted on the press, that information would so easily be cut off. So that's one of the things when we are setting up those pages, why it's so important that we adhere to those margins on the side, the top and the bottom, and we extend things to the bleed line where they need to be extended. So front page, we have some contrast. You know, we've got this kind of all green background, and honestly, these images are adding good contrast, but things are also starting to get lost because there's just too much going on. Let's see if I can block the sun with my head, I guess. We've got information kind of in a circle here. We've got information in a burst right here. We've got information over here in a burst. We've got information right here in a square or a rectangle. Contrast is what we are going to use to be able to set up a hierarchy of the things that we want people to see first, second, third, fourth, etc. And kind of, if you have to employ bursts, backgrounds like this, putting black around your text, it's because other items on your page, they're just not working. And I get it. There's going to be instances where you're going to have to say, they gave me too much ad copy, which is definitely what's going on in this piece. I didn't know what else to do. You wanted it to stand out. But another thing too, when it comes to contrast, is let's look at this background. There's small text here. You can probably barely see it. And really small text here that's probably 5-point type over this busy background. You don't have enough contrast between white small text and that busy background. That, you know, because that background has some whites in it and it's making it very hard to read, very hard to see. And I've got my glasses on. So that's something that you need to keep in mind when you're doing contrast. All right, so let's look at this piece on the screen over here. So we have contrast in this piece in our image that was chosen. You know, there's contrast on the table between the plates, the wood of the table, and then even the layout of the text over this image. Now, I could tell when I was laying this out that I kind of needed to nestle my text in here. The buy one, get one half off, right? So I nestled it right in this space because I wanted to, you know, use the same color scheme as, you know, kind of the rest of the image to tie it in together. That'll get into our repetition next. But then the half off, I wanted it to be big. So I wanted to, again, adding in that hierarchy, more contrast than the buy one, get one. I wanted the first thing people to see is, ooh, half off. Ooh, that's a good deal. I love half off, right? So good contrast there. Going on to page 2. Again, the red and the white creates contrast. This background is the same as this background. I just colored them differently. That creates contrast. The image over this white background creates contrast. So there's a lot of contrast going on this page. Next, we have our repetition. So repetition, again, is having things that are kind of alike on the page, so that way the eye is able to easily glide through the page and see that there's repeated elements and understand what goes with something else. So, you know, there have been times where advertisers, one advertiser will buy the front and another advertiser will buy the back. If your front of your postcard doesn't match the feel of the back of the postcard, that repetition isn't there, and it can become confusing for the viewer. So you really don't want that. You want to make sure that you're using that repetition. So repetition can be in the font choices. This font, same as this font. We've got some repetition in our coupon offer here. Eat up our early bird specials. Repetition in our color scheme. Repetition between even this font and this font. So again, lots of different things can bring in that repetition. There's a repeating background in the back that ties everything together, even though it's two different colors. If we really zoom in, you can see that the pattern is actually seamless between the two. So that's part of our repetition. Next, we have alignment. So again, I knew that I wanted this nestled in here. That's part of that alignment. Even on the image itself, you know how the plates are aligned nicely with the table? Whoever took this photograph, which this is a professional photograph, definitely understood how to compose a shot. Everything is lined up so nicely in this composition. So we need to lay out our composition with a similar alignment. So I have a center alignment here. I have this centered in the bar. I have it centered vertically in the bar. I have everything kind of centered on the page because it's not a large page. It's a smaller postcard. So a center alignment would work. I have these, two different sides to the coupon here, but this is aligned nicely with each other. But I didn't need to align everything together because, going into my proximity now, I understand that this goes together and this is one coupon offer, which is then aligned nicely with the logo and nicely with the contact information. Which brings me to proximity. Proximity is probably the hardest one to verbally explain, but it's really important, and I think it's best shown on the page. Proximity just means putting things that belong together, put them together on the page. Because the eye chunks things together. We chunk information together when we're looking at it, whether or not we know we're doing it. So let's see. If I'm looking for the address to a place, I'm going to want the street to be near the town, right? And then I'm probably going to want the phone number to be near there too. I want all of my contact information in a similar place because my eye's just going to go, oh, it's located in Atlanta. All right, here's the phone number I can call. I'm not going to sit here and go 395 Peachtree Street, Northwest. In my brain, when I look at something, I might, if I need to write down the address or, try to think to myself where Peachtree Street is located, but my brain is just going to instantly look for things that it thinks should be together in the same area. So what if the phone number was like up here? I'm going to see 395 Peachtree, Atlanta, and I'm not going to see a phone number. I'm probably going to go, oh, they didn't list their phone number. If I'm just quickly looking at a piece, right? I might not look all over the page to find the other information I need. The same thing about this coupon. This is all one offer. Buy one, get one half off. Eat up our early bird specials. Those early bird specials are weekdays between 4:30 and 5:30. In order to buy one, get one half off, you have to buy one appetizer or main dish and then get one half off. And then there's the disclaimer, the small type, must present this coupon. If this information was all over the page and wasn't together, I wouldn't understand. My brain wouldn't chunk it together and say, oh, this is a coupon offer. This is an offer. I need to bring this with me. I need to present this coupon in order to get the offer, right? So that's where that proximity comes into play. The same thing with your menus for week 1 and week 2. Let me go back into week 2. Let me just open Starlight Bistro. So we have, different items together. We have items with their prices and descriptions with the item. If things were kind of all over the page and didn't have that proximity of keeping things that belong together, this menu would get really confusing really easy, right? So that's why we want to put those things together. All right, next we have, the 5 basic elements of design: shape, line, color, texture, and value. Let me just turn that off. So I believe we went over that in week 3. Yes. So I always like to explain this one by saying, what if you were doing an advertisement for a yoga studio and you wanted to add some decorative line work to the ad, right? And when you think of a yoga studio, you think of like zen and peaceful and breathe in and breathe out. And honestly, I should be doing a lot more yoga than I am doing for the amount of things I have on my plate on a day. But when we're trying to pick a line that we would use for our design, are we going to pick something like this, which looks like a jagged mountain? Or would we pick something more like this, which is like, peaceful? If I saw this on a yoga studio ad, I'd be like, I think I'm going to leave there with anxiety, not feeling more zen, But if I saw this, I'd be like, oh, breathe in, breathe out, release the tension, right? So the quality of our line really can express, a psychological characteristic to our audience that's viewing our ad. So we really need to be aware when we're getting into Illustrator and when we're getting into InDesign and we're using that pen tool, that if it needs to be a nice, fluid, smooth line, we need to be pretty good with the pen tool. That's, not to do something that you learned probably in Illustrator, but you're going to want to click, drag, and this is where I think that the pen tool in Illustrator works better, because it gives you the kind of that option, like it's going to look like this, and it doesn't do that in InDesign. So my tip is use Illustrator for the pen tool if you need to be really specific. All right, then we have shape. So again, same thing with shape. We can have freeform, organic, or geometric shapes. So if I have my, yoga ad, I might want to add a nice little leaf shape to it for, nature and zen. I might not want to add like this big arrow, things like that. Texture. You can have those, texture is really interesting because it can stand for so many different things. So you might have a texture background, an implied texture that you add to the background of your advertisement. Texture can be the paper that you choose to have your ad printed on. The example I always like to use is when you have wedding invitations printed. If you've ever had wedding invitations printed, you probably went somewhere and they were like, here's our book of wedding invitations. Feel the linen of this paper. And you're like, this is going to cost me $1 million. When it is all said and done, I am going to become a graphic designer and charge someone else $1 million to have their wedding invitations made and printed. Such an industry, the wedding invitation industry. But again, you know, that texture of the paper can really change the entire look and feel of a piece. So you want to keep that in mind. Then we have color. So color can convey a message. When you guys get into DES 114, you're really going to get into the whole psychology of color, which is really, really cool. I teach 114 all the time. I love it because I love really getting into the psychology of color. I think it's so interesting. But you know, in design, color needs to support the message. So again, if I'm doing my yoga ad, maybe I want some nice, you know, purples, some light purples, some light greens, you know, really zen and non-threatening colors. You know, bright 100% yellow with red text on top is probably going to give somebody anxiety if they look at it for a yoga ad. It's a great color scheme to do for a pizza ad if they're having a free pizza. That was the color scheme we always went with when I made coupons. All right, here you go. Yellow coupon, big bold red type that says free. And the client would be like, ah, perfect. But, you know, it conveys a message. Different colors convey a message. Then even the tone, again, the tone of the colors. I might want, you know, maybe something this color purple, not something like really dark and ominous purple for my yoga ad. So, a lot of information today. Does anybody have any questions before we end for today? And again, for those of you who are from Jason's class, please feel free to hop into any of the Zoom rooms. You can, I'm going to share my slides with you guys as well. My slides do have my contact information on them, my email. So if you need to get in touch with me, you can. Until he gets back, please feel free to reach out. I'm here to help you guys. And I hope you all have a successful week 4. Remember, don't get anything in late. The course will turn into a pumpkin. It will lock you out at midnight.